If you wanted to start an agroforestry project, the best bit of advice I think I could give you would be to knowledge yourself up with as much information as possible. Every farm is completely different. Every field is completely different. Design your own tailor-made system for your own requirements.
I would be very surprised if anyone else's fitted your own farm, and that's the joy of them. And we obviously don't have a vast amount in the UK yet, but there's a fair amount actually around about that are worth seeing.
There are some amazing funding projects out there at the moment that don't only give you funding for planting the trees, they'll also help you plan your whole scheme as well. The first thing is that whether it's through the Woodland Trust, the Forestry Commission, go look at those schemes and it costs nothing to ask for advice.
Go and see what works. Don't worry about what other people are maybe going to think of what you're doing, and then just get on and do it. Best time to plant a tree 20 years ago, like I say, with agroforestry, and then you see the results then 20, 30 years time, you're going to be able to sit back in the shade of that tree you've planted.
Get the preparations right, get your ground ready. If you put in trees in strips, if you can, put pollinating and flower strips underneath, ready before you plant the trees. And really think forward around how will those trees really improve your farming in 5, 10, 20 years time.
So 2 things I would start. One is to look at what trees you've already got. Actually most farms already have some trees that you could be using better. You might have a hedge that you could let grow or coppice, or you could have a little corner of woodland that is not doing anything. So that's a great place to start. Plant 50 trees somewhere, plant 5 trees somewhere. It just gets your head into the space of what it takes to establish a tree and to make it grow. So sort of dipping your toe in the water effectively.
I tried to cram in too many trees, and I wasn't thinking about like natural access routes and turning circles of tractors, so give the trees a bit of space.
Don't do too much in one year. So if you do a lot of investment and do a lot of planting in year one and you get a horrible establishment year, lack of rain, very high temperatures, very strong winds, there's a very good chance you're going to have to go back in there and replant again. Whereas if you're doing it over a few years, you're reducing the possibility of that devastating weather.
We're on heavy clay here, and we tried creating a slot through the soil, and that has some real advantages. It makes it easier and quicker to plant, and in theory it gives the roots of the tree an ability to get down quickly into those lower levels. The trouble is, when it's really dry, is that crack just splits open and you end up with a little tree sort of hanging on the edge of a crack going, feed me, water me. Where we didn't manage to then mulch very quickly, we lost quite a lot of trees through that. We do still do that slip, but we plant slightly off to one side and we mulch really quickly. The earlier you can plant, the better. So where we planted in December or early January, trees mostly survived. If we didn't get round to it till late February, early March, it's much harder. And particularly when you get a hot, dry spring, they just haven't developed enough root to really get going.
Liaise with your nursery, and also if you can try and make sure that you get lists of trees that are coming from your nursery, because sometimes they might be a bit short, which isn't a problem, but when you think you've got a certain number to plant and then it transpires they're not all there, it's confusing. So if you can get that list a day or two in advance of delivery, that'll be really, really beneficial for your planting scheme.
We bought very cheap stakes and they snapped within the first storm. So we planted in March and we were restaking in May. So yeah, don't skimp on stakes. It's one thing that we've suffered from is red deer browsing. And so we planted our trees and shrubs in 2 different types of guards. The trees are in 1.8 metre tubes. They're absolutely fine, there's no problem with those over the 2 years. And the shrubs we planted in small spiral guards, and some of those are about the same size now as when we planted them 2 years ago, because as soon as they appear out the top of the tube, they just get browsed. If you're in a very high density red deer population, I would think about what guards and what species you're planting.
Very simple things where we perhaps got it a little bit wrong was that in our alley cropping we've given a 3-metre protection against the cattle on each alley, and when that could have been quite a lot narrower, I think. We could have brought that down to 2 or maybe 1.5 metres and still protected those trees adequately. We also learnt in the early days that actually the more wood chip we put on, the quicker the trees establish and the less replanting you need to do. So actually getting it right first time, really nurturing those trees in the first year makes all the difference, saves you time, effort and money in spades further down the line. if we want to carry on having animals, in our farming systems, they're going to have to be in wood pasture. They're going to have to be in living barns like trees. It's a cheaper way of doing it, and it's a better way for their welfare. I'm just so inspired by what is possible.